In the heart of Chicago, a bustling city alive with ambition and dreams, Derek Thompson was considered an anchor, a dedicated husband, a respected accountant, and a father to two beautiful children. He prided himself on his ability to provide stability in an unpredictable world. He worked long hours, meticulously planning finances and investments, carefully drafting monthly budgets that ensured his family had everything they needed, or so he thought. To him, his life was a symphony of routine and duty, each note resonating with the sound of trust and loyalty. But beneath the surface, a tempest brewed. His wife, Claire, the woman who had smiled at him across coffee cups and whose laughter danced through their home, had been rehearsing an entirely different script. For months, she'd been entangled in an affair with Jack, a charming entrepreneur from her social circle, whose charisma was as intoxicating as it was dangerous. Their clandestine meetings were laced with the thrill of secrecy, but the emotional burden of living a double life weighed heavily upon her. It wasn't until one cold evening in late autumn, after Derek had returned from a grueling work week, that the illusion shattered. Claire's absence etched itself into the walls of their home as he prepared dinner for their children. The faint sound of a text notification chimed from her phone, sitting innocently on the kitchen counter. Curiosity gnawed at him, and within a moment of weakness, he opened the message, only to find a name that chilled him to the marrow: Jack. A short, flirty exchange flickered across the screen, each word slicing deeper than any knife could. Derek's heart pounded as reality morphed into a cruel parody of the life he believed he was living. Fueled by rage and betrayal, he thought about confronting Claire, but the immediate firestorm would have to wait. Instead, he devised a plan that would ensure she faced the magnitude of her actions. He spent days meticulously collecting evidence, tracking her movements, compiling messages, and gathering witnesses within their social circle. Each piece of information was a thread in a web he would soon use to ensnare the both of them. The dinner party they arranged for their closest friends marked the night of reckoning. Derek prepared himself, donning a composed mask to hide the earthquake of emotions churning within. The laughter of their friends filled the air, an ironic backdrop to the storm that was about to unfurl. As they shared drinks and made toasts, Derek offered a toast that would ignite the flame of confrontation. "Let's raise our glasses to love, loyalty, and family," he announced, his voice steady but laced with an intensity that caused the room to quiet. Claire's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but Derek pressed on. "And to those who betray those sacred commitments." He glanced at Claire, then turned slowly to face Jack, who mingled by the bar. "And especially to those who think they can have it all, without consequence." It was a shot that echoed in the silence. Conversations halted, eyes widened, and a palpable tension tightened the atmosphere as Derek revealed the evidence he had painstakingly gathered. "Claire, I assume you'd like to explain this?" Derek waved his phone, the damning text displayed for all to see. Gasps erupted as their friends absorbed the betrayal. Jack's complexion paled, realizing he'd been standing in the crosshairs of Derek's calculated vengeance. "How could you? This isn't just about us," Claire stammered, eyes darting around the room for support, only to find none. The friends she had once relied on turned their backs, their expressions morphing from shock to scorn as they began to distance themselves from the scandal unfolding. "Not just about us," Derek echoed, each word dripping with sarcasm. "You made it about everyone with your selfish choices. This is not just betrayal. It's a public disgrace." He leaned closer, relishing the moment as he saw the realization dawn upon her. "You thought your actions would go unnoticed, that you could flip between lives like a light switch. But this is where the charade ends." By the end of the evening, Claire was left to grapple with the fact that she was now not just the wife, but the infamous cheat. Derek took control of their shared finances, froze all joint accounts, and set the wheels of divorce in motion as the bitterness of betrayal crystallized into a desire for financial and social justice. On that fateful night, Derek knew one thing. This was just the beginning of a war he was determined to win. There was no room for negotiation, no space for forgiveness, and no way back to a life built on deceit and lies. Claire, along with her lover Jack, would soon find themselves utterly dismantled, as the weight of Derek's wrath descended upon them, like a storm they had never seen coming. And so began the dismantling of the two people who thought they could tear apart his life with impunity. The reckoning was only just beginning. The months that followed the explosive fallout from that night became a blur of courtroom battles and public scrutiny. Derek transformed into a man on a mission, wielding calculated strategies like swords on a battlefield. He poured every ounce of energy into dismantling Claire's facade, intent on ensuring she and Jack faced the dire consequences of their actions. The initial shock of her betrayal morphed into a storm of justified fury, propelling him into a ruthless pursuit of justice. The first step to reclaiming his life was securing legal representation. Derek hired Lily, a tenacious divorce attorney known for her fierce advocacy for clients who had been wronged. Over cups of coffee in her sleek minimalist office, she laid out a plan that would bleed Claire's finances dry while simultaneously crushing Jack's reputation. "We'll file for divorce, citing infidelity, and I'll make sure you get every cent you deserve," she stated, eyes gleaming with ambition. Derek nodded, feeling a spark of hope ignite amidst the ashes of betrayal. Within weeks, Derek's life turned from endless grief to unyielding warfare. He gathered financial documents, bank statements, and shared property evaluations, all while meticulously detailing Claire's extravagant spending that funded her affair: a shiny new car, expensive dinners, and lavish gifts for Jack. Each discovery fanned the flames of his righteous indignation, fueling a desire for revenge that no courtroom could satisfy. While navigating through the legal quagmire, Derek also worked to expose Claire and Jack within their social circle. He leveraged friendship dynamics, planting seeds of doubt and discontent amongst their so-called allies. As whispers of scandal circulated, colleagues at work unceremoniously began distancing themselves from Claire at networking events. Derek's meticulous destruction of their lives took on a life of its own, resembling a wildfire that fed off their lies and deceit. Claire, feeling cornered and desperate, reached out to Derek for a chance to discuss their children, hoping to renew some semblance of normalcy. It was a calculated move on her part, one she believed might win him over. She invited him to a cafe, a neutral ground where they could discuss co-parenting, but deep down, Derek knew it was a ploy. "Derek, please, I know I messed up, but can we at least try to fix this for the kids?" she began, her voice quaking yet assertive. He leaned back, crossing his arms, a sardonic smile playing on his lips. "Fix this? You think I can just forget you've destroyed everything we built? Do you even understand the concept of trust?" "But you have to think of the children," Claire pressed, her tone shifting from remorse to frustration. "Children?" He laughed coldly. "You made your choices, Claire. They're the ones who will pay the price for your actions. If you truly cared about them, you wouldn't have let this happen." The confrontation brought Alice, their oldest child, into the picture, a conversation about their future looming like a dark cloud, as Derek contemplated the emotional damage now etched into their little lives. Claire's pleas grew weak as the reality struck her. Compassion was no longer a luxury Derek could afford. As the divorce proceedings began, the courtroom pulsed with tension. Derek sat firmly, embodying control and resolve, while Claire, teary-eyed and unkempt, looked defeated. Their split was public fodder, with local media eager to cover the sordid details. The whispers grew louder as Derek provided proof of her infidelity to the judge. Every expensive dinner she had while Derek slaved away for their family became fodder for his counterclaim. In a final volley, Derek's lawyer, Lily, delivered a powerful statement. "Your Honor, Claire Thompson's actions didn't just affect her marriage, they affected her children, her husband's reputation, and the very fabric of their lives. She chose betrayal for a fleeting thrill. We seek full custody and a fair financial settlement that ensures Derek can continue to provide for their children without the burden of Claire's reckless choices. The judge nodded, absorbing every word, and the courtroom fell silent as Claire's facade crumbled. Her pleas for leniency echoed hollow, and Derek's heart thrummed with a mixture of satisfaction and sorrow. He had become the embodiment of justice, empowering himself through the painful unraveling of his former life. A turning point came when Claire's relationship with Jack took a nosedive. Financially crippled and socially ostracized, he abandoned her. Derek watched with a grim satisfaction as Claire was left to face the consequences of her decisions alone. Through the echoing halls of the courthouse, he could hear the murmured sympathy from onlookers, how the affair had not only cost him his marriage, but transformed Claire into a societal outcast. At the final hearing, Derek felt an exhilarating rush of empowerment. It was a dance of destruction, where his last words would seal the fate of their tumultuous past. Turning to Claire, whose eyes shimmered with a mixture of humiliation and regret, he fixed her with a steely gaze. "Did you think I wouldn't fight back? That I would just roll over?" He leaned in slightly, a smirk on his face. "You wanted excitement? Enjoy your new life, Claire. You've earned it, seething in isolation while I get to take our kids far from your chaos." With a finality that pierced through the chaotic clamor of the courtroom, Derek left with his head held high, the remnants of a marriage buried beneath the weight of betrayal. The scars of the past would stay with him, but he had learned to wield them, not as chains, but as armor. He emerged stronger, willing to craft a new identity from the ashes of his former life, having claimed justice against the toxicity that had sought to engulf him. No more hiding. He was now the architect of his destiny, standing tall against the very system that sought to trample him into submission. As he stepped into the sunlight, he relished the sense of freedom and power coursing through his veins. Some wounds may never heal, but Derek was done being a victim. He had risen from the wreckage, ready for whatever lay ahead, knowing that he had triumphed against all odds. With the courtroom drama behind him, Derek settled into a newfound routine, each day steeped in the formidable realities of single fatherhood and rebuilding his life. His children, Alice and Ethan, became the center of his world. For the first time, he felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. Every school drop-off, late-night homework session, and soccer game filled the void that Claire had left. His focus shifted from the shattered remains of his marriage to nurturing the bright futures of his kids. Derek also threw himself into his work with renewed vigor, determined to not just rebuild, but to excel. He surprised his colleagues with innovative approaches that catapulted him ahead in the workplace. His relentless drive didn't go unnoticed. His firm, renowned for its experience in corporate finance, recognized his hard work with a promotion that came with a hefty raise and a chance to lead a new project, a turnaround plan for struggling clients that had been previously overlooked. With each success, Derek maintained a sense of humility, reminding himself that these victories were not merely for him, but for Alice and Ethan. He made it a point to involve them in essential decisions, fostering an environment where opinions mattered, something Claire never valued. Their laughter echoed in the hallways of their modest home, once again filled with the warmth of stability and love, and devoid of the tensions that had plagued their former life. Yet shadows lingered. The scars of betrayal were etched deep, a reminder that life could be cruel and unpredictably harsh. Derek had transformed into a fortress, but the walls he built also grew thick with distrust. His disdain for Claire, now commonly referred to as the ex, was palpable to anyone who ventured too closely. Friends who had once been common allies were forced to take sides. Many chose to cut ties with Claire, emboldened by the evidence of her betrayal, yet Derek found solace in the few who remained. One evening, while picking up groceries, he unexpectedly encountered Claire. The fluorescent lights of the store flickered unsettlingly above them, casting a surreal glow on the woman who had once been his partner. She appeared different, ragged around the edges, her demeanor weighed down by the ramifications of her choices. The casual warmth of their shared past was replaced by an icy tension that crackled in the air. "Derek," she started, voice timid but steady, as though rehearsing the words in her mind. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything. I never wanted this." He felt the flicker of old emotions ignite, but quickly extinguished them. "Save it, Claire. Sorry doesn't fix years of betrayal, or the damage you did to our children," he replied, his tone sharper than he intended. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but Derek remained impervious. "You can't just come back now and expect forgiveness, and I won't let you ruin what I've built with the kids." As he turned to leave, he heard her call out, desperation laden in her voice. "I'm trying to get better, to fix things. If I can be a better mother." The fissures in her facade were all too apparent, yet Derek felt no sense of remorse. Instead, he felt the conviction strengthen within him. "You've had your chances, Claire. This time, I won't let you manipulate me or our kids again." He held his gaze steady as he walked away, knowing he wouldn't let the bitterness of their past seep back into his life. He had worked too hard to reforge the bonds with Alice and Ethan into something sturdy, something invulnerable to the corrosive effects of deceit. Days blurred into weeks, each one a testament to his resilience. Yet, Derek knew Claire wouldn't let him go so easily. She was a master of emotional pulls, but he had learned why that game failed. Derek implemented boundaries, not allowing Claire to impose herself upon the children without his consent. He feared her ability to charm, but now he had watched too much to be fooled again. As the massive turnover project at work gained momentum, Derek was invited to present to some of the firm's largest clients. He walked into the conference room, dressed sharply, exuding confidence, knowing that every hard-earned success was not just for him, but a rebuke against the chaos Claire had unleashed. Bright fluorescent lights hummed above as he addressed the board, enthusiasm pouring from him with each carefully chosen word. It wasn't merely about numbers, though. It was about redemption, a new identity forged from hardship. His clients responded with positivity and encouragement, recognizing Derek's determination to reclaim both his professional and personal life. As business boomed, Derek's life hit a tipping point he had always dreamed of. Freedom and a hint of prosperity were finally becoming his reality. He found himself at a crossroads due to a life-altering opportunity, a chance to expand his accounting firm and contribute to a financial literacy program aimed at helping disadvantaged families break cycles of poverty. A project that resonated deeply with him, setting out to give back to the community he had once overlooked. This program would require significant funding, but Derek had built a reputation for strategic investments, and seeking collaborations came naturally to him now. He pooled resources, reached out to potential sponsors, and rallied support from his network. The momentum fed into a charity event that felt electric, a convergence of collaboration and ambition that drove his newfound purpose. The night of the gala arrived, decorated with twinkling lights, heartfelt speeches, and the palpable energy of altruism in the air. Derek stood among hungry investors who were eager to be part of something larger than themselves. It made sense then when he spotted Claire in the crowd, surprisingly present as someone he deemed a relic of his past. She was gracefully dressed and emotionally fragile, her posture betraying the facade of confidence. Derek's first instinct was defensiveness. He steeled himself, expecting a confrontation. Instead, she quietly approached him, and in the swirl of the evening, he couldn't shake the sense of unease that settled between them. "Derek, I see what you're doing, and it's amazing," she said, a soft sincerity evident in her tone. "I've been working on myself. I want to be part of this." She gestured to the events surrounding them. In that moment, something within him began to uncoil, but he quickly tightened his grip on that precarious thread. "Claire, you don't belong here. This work requires dedication, something I doubt you can pull off while managing your own chaos. Let's keep our focus on the kids and this project." As the evening unfolded, Derek realized he had crossed a threshold he never thought possible. His life wasn't dominated by anger or revenge anymore. Rather, it was guided by the invigorating strength that comes from healing. And even though Claire's presence unsettled him, it underscored his growth, an acknowledgement that healing often wound together with moments of confrontation. As the night pressed on, the event turned into a resounding success, and names were exchanged, hopes rekindled. As Derek prepared to leave, he glanced back at Claire, whose eyes reflected a combination of admiration and remorse. Derek recognized the weight of her gaze, the sorrow that had followed her choices. Perhaps there was a flicker of understanding between them, but it was fleeting. He chose to walk away, rather than dwell on sentiments, sparked by yesterday's, unwilling to remain in the past. Driving home, thoughts raced through Derek's mind, reflecting on how much he had transformed. He felt lighter, unshackled from the chains of betrayal. His only focus was on the journey ahead, a path leading toward healing, strength, and purpose beyond the wreckage of an unstable marriage. Clear skies loomed before him, each day holding new opportunities and the promise of a future defined by resilience rather than regret. With newfound clarity, Derek prepared himself to face challenges ahead, knowing that he had conquered the fears that once entrapped him. The momentum of Derek's life continued to build, reinforced by the success of the gala and the awareness that had grown within him. The event was not just a financial success. It had become a rallying point for change and empowerment. Fueled by a sense of urgency, Derek dove deeper into his newly adopted mission, his heart firmly set on helping those who felt as trapped as he once had. With every passing week, Derek invested time into the financial literacy program. He hosted workshops, partnered with local schools, and sought sponsorships from businesses that shared his vision. His days grew longer, but each moment felt purposeful. The sound of laughter mingled with the resonance of children learning what he had once taken for granted filled him with joy. Yet, the emotional undercurrents of his past remained a consistent challenge. Claire continued to flit in and out of his life, awkwardly attempting to reestablish a presence in their children's lives. Derek remained guarded, always ensuring that their interactions stayed on the surface level, driven solely by co-parenting duties. However, her attempts to reconnect often disrupted the newfound stability he had fought so hard to create. The emotional baggage he had worked so diligently to unpack threatened to rear its head. One rainy afternoon, while picking up Alice and Ethan from school, they encountered Claire walking with a group of parents. Derek felt the tension pulse through him like a live wire. "Dad, can we say hi to Mom?" Alice asked, her voice a gentle plea that tugged at his heart. "We can," Derek replied, his voice laced with reluctance. They approached, and Claire's face lit up with a smile, a practiced mask of warmth. "Hi, guys, I missed you," she exclaimed, pulling them into a hug that barely masked the informational awkwardness of her presence. Derek's jaw tightened as he watched. "What's going on here?" he thought. "This isn't how things should be." After exchanging pleasantries, Claire looked at Derek, her eyes reflecting a flicker of something unidentifiable. "I was thinking, maybe we can take the kids out this weekend, spend some time together?" Every instinct in Derek screamed against the offer. "Claire, we need to keep things separate, just for now." "That's the only way to keep things stable for the kids," he responded, battling against the temptation to let emotional nostalgia cloud his judgment. "But they want to see us together," she insisted, her voice rising slightly, attracting the attention of other parents nearby. "They want us to be happy and stable," he replied firmly. "What we had is gone, and you need to accept that." The finality in Derek's tone edged the conversation towards a close, realizing he was asserting boundaries that had been invisible for far too long. As he ushered the kids toward the car, he felt Claire's gaze pierce through him, the unspoken tension hanging thick in the air. But Derek knew he couldn't allow her emotional needs to disrupt his vision anymore. The kids' happiness came first. As summer rolled in and warmed the winds of Chicago, Derek's financial literacy program blossomed. Discussions of debt management, budgeting, and savings transformed from daunting subjects into empowering lessons for families. The smiles on attendees' faces after each workshop were proof of the positive impact he was making. He felt the thrill of knowledge as a tool for change, a far cry from the years spent feeling powerless within his marriage. However, the remnants of anxiety still lurked in the background. He often replayed scenarios in his mind, strategizing for potential clashes with Claire. The possibility of confrontation loomed, like dark clouds threatening a clear blue sky. He knew that as they continued navigating the co-parenting landscape, he had to remain vigilant, ensuring her erratic behavior wouldn't entangle him again. One evening, as Derek prepared for an upcoming workshop, his phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "We need to talk. It's important." He hesitated before replying, a mix of caution and curiosity washing over him. What is it?" The answer came quickly. "Can we meet?" The request hung over him like a heavy weight, an unwelcome disturbance shattering the peace he had cultivated. Reluctantly, he agreed to meet that weekend at a nearby coffee shop, known for its cozy atmosphere, a neutral ground where tensions could surface, but without the backdrop of their shared past. When they sat across from each other, Derek noticed that Claire seemed different, her posture slightly hunched, hands nervously twirling the coffee cup. "I wanted to talk about the kids," she began, her voice wavering. "I've begun seeing a therapist. I need to understand why I made those choices." Derek felt a flicker of surprise mixed with skepticism. "And you think this will change everything?" he replied, struggling to keep his frustration at bay. "It's a start," she stated, eyes pleading for validation. "I want to understand how to be a better mother, to regain their trust. I want to be more present." The vulnerability in her voice stirred a sense of compassion within him, but it was quickly overshadowed by caution. "Claire, wanting to be better is one thing, but your past actions left deep scars. Don't think this conversation is some sort of absolution." His response was cold, but Derek had worked too hard to establish boundaries to let them crumble. "I don't expect it to be," she conceded, tone deflated. "I know I hurt you. I hurt them. I want them to see me as someone who recognizes my mistakes." Derek struggled to suppress a mix of emotions. He wanted to believe her words, but also knew that time would serve as the truest measure of change. "Actions speak louder than words, Claire. I won't lie to you. There's a long road ahead for you to prove you can be trustworthy." Sensing the weight of his words, Claire nodded, her expression somber but determined. "Can we at least work on co-parenting better?" "For their sake?" The sincerity in her voice pierced through his defenses, igniting a flicker of hope despite the bitterness of their past. "I will do what's best for the kids, Claire," he replied, "but I'll hold you accountable." As their conversation wound down, Derek felt an unexpected sense of relief. This was not the end of their entanglement, but a new chapter predicated on boundaries and accountability. The journey would be long, fraught with challenges, but it felt manageable now as part of the grander scheme of his life's evolving story. He exited the cafe with a stronger resolve, appreciating the unexpected turn of events. Perhaps healing would come not just from his own triumph, but also through the recognition that redemption could be possible, albeit slowly and cautiously, for those who recognize their missteps. Each step forward held hope and determination to lead not just for himself, but for his children. They deserved a better narrative. He was committed to writing it with unwavering conviction, constructing a foundation infused with resilience, purpose, and strength. As he glanced toward the setting sun on that warm summer evening, Derek took heart in knowing he was finally in control of his own fate. He was no longer defined by betrayal, but empowered by the lessons learned along the way. The following weeks unfolded like a delicate tapestry, woven with careful threads of co-parenting, personal growth, and renewed dedication to his mission. Derek's interactions with Claire remained professional, focused solely on their children. Each meeting became a strategic step towards rebuilding something functional, albeit fraught with underlying complexity. He acknowledged her attempts at improvement, but was brutally honest about their shared responsibility in cultivating a healthy environment for Alice and Ethan. In the midst of rearing his children and fostering his career, Derek found solace within the walls of the financial literacy program. Each workshop not only empowered families, but also became an emotional outlet for him. Sheltering himself in purpose and community revitalized his spirit. One evening, while prepping for a particularly important session at the local community center, he felt a surge of excitement at the prospect of teaching families about budgeting and smart investments, the very topics that had once seemed obscured by the clouds of his tumultuous marriage. As he stood before a gathering of eager participants, their faces illuminated with curiosity, he felt a rush of fulfillment. The engagement was palpable, questions flying around as he navigated through the intricacies of financial health. He shared anecdotes about his experiences, emphasizing the lessons he had learned the hard way. The energy in the room pushed Derek to be more open, and he didn't just teach, he inspired. However, as his confidence grew, so too did the complexities of his relationship with Claire. Their cooperative parenting efforts blossomed partly from shared goals for their children and partly from the evolving dynamic that allowed them to recognize each other as separate adults. But caution still shadowed Derek, a gnawing sense of distrust lingering beneath the surface. One evening, after a particularly successful workshop, Derek came home to find a message from Claire on his phone. "Can we talk? Important about the kids." His stomach tightened as old habits of anxiety bubbled to the surface. What now? The very notion of uncertainty around her sparked concern, leading his mind to dwell on the possibility of disaster. Yet, he had promised to remain open and honest, a promise he was determined to uphold. He agreed to meet the next day at their children's favorite park, a neutral and familiar ground where childhood laughter flourished against the backdrop of their shared story. As he arrived, Derek spotted Claire standing by the swings, hands tucked nervously in her pockets, an image of a woman grappling with her fears. "Thanks for coming," she began, her voice steady, though her eyes revealed an undercurrent of unease. "What's going on?" he asked, scanning the area for Alice and Ethan, who were occupied with their friends. Claire took a deep breath, her vulnerability palpable. "Alice has been asking questions about everything. She doesn't understand why we couldn't stay together." Derek felt a wave of frustration wash over him, but he quickly stifled it. "We can't shield them from reality, Claire. Kids need honest answers." "I know, but I don't want her to hate me. I don't want us to be the reason they feel broken." The tremor in her voice was a reminder of their shared responsibility, a sentiment he had struggled with, yet understood deeply. Taking a moment to gather his thoughts, Derek softened his posture. "They won't blame you if we give them the right context. It's time they hear the truth in a way they can process." He watched as Claire processed this, a veil of guilt flickering across her features. "You're right. Maybe we can talk to them together. I can explain my situation, how I messed up," she suggested hesitantly. Derek considered it. "That might help, but you have to be genuine. Don't sugarcoat the reality of what happened." As the afternoon sunlight warmed the park, Claire nodded, determination etched across her face. "I want them to know I still love them, and I'm working hard to be better. I can't change the past, but I want to earn their trust back." The candor in her voice struck Derek. He had grown comfortable showcasing his emotional resilience, but her raw honesty stirred something deeper within him, a flicker of hope. "Then let's do it together," he agreed, his voice steady. "It might be hard, but facing this head-on is what they deserve." That evening, as they shaped a plan for the difficult conversation, Derek felt a wave of camaraderie with Claire, an essential transition from ex-spouses grappling with resentment towards co-parents united in purpose. Their scheduled family meetup became a pivotal moment in all their lives. As Alice and Ethan played on the swings, Derek and Claire sat them down. The tension in the air was palpable, driven by the stakes of this conversation. "Kids, we want to talk to you about something important," Derek began, glancing at Claire, who appeared equally apprehensive. "What is it?" Ethan asked, his expression shifting between confusion and curiosity. Derek took a breath, steadying himself. "You both know that Mommy and I aren't together anymore. We wanted to explain why that happened, but more importantly, we want you to know how much we both still love you." Claire picked up where Derek left off, sharing her perspective openly, her mistakes, her journey, and her commitment to becoming a better mother. "It's important for you to know that I'm working really hard to figure this out. I'm not perfect, but I love you with all my heart," she explained, her words flowing with authenticity. The children listened intently, absorbing the candid exchange. Derek shared his feelings as well, grounding the conversation in a sense of stability and resolve, while reinforcing how their unity, despite the turmoil, remained strong. What followed was an unexpected exchange of emotions, the gap of understanding narrowing as Alice began to voice her single concern. "So, we still have both of you?" Derek and Claire exchanged glances filled with relief and affection. "Absolutely. You will always have us," Derek replied, his heart swelling with pride as they collectively assured their children they were still a family, just redefined. In the days and weeks that followed, communication between Derek and Claire shifted positively. They began collaborating more effectively, attending school events together, and navigating challenges as a cohesive team. Derek found himself cautiously embracing the possibility of a civil friendship, viewing their dynamic as a continuously evolving partnership, adapted for the well-being of their children. With a growing sense of stability, Derek felt ready to take on his next challenge. The culmination of hard work in the financial literacy program drew close, an initiative supported by community leaders, local businesses, and families eager for change. He'd organized a major community event that would celebrate the achievements of participants and provide tangible resources for families committed to financial empowerment. As the day approached, excitement filled the air, but so did the weight of everything he had fought to achieve. On the day of the event, with community members gathered, smiles lighting the atmosphere, Derek took to the stage. The applause surged like waves, empowering him to share his passion for creating brighter financial futures for families, infusing every word with purpose and conviction. When he glanced at Claire and the children in the crowd, a surge of pride washed over him. Their shared journey had not only transformed their family dynamic, but also rekindled a spirit of cooperation that mirrored the event's theme, unity through adversity. As the applause echoed, Derek felt the culmination of struggle, healing, and purpose coalesce into an experience filled with resilience and hope. In that moment, he recognized something pivotal. While past scars may never completely fade, there existed profound beauty in recognizing growth through life's unforgiving trials. Derek's heart brimmed with conviction, knowing that while he was not only surviving but thriving, he was carving out a new path for himself, a life built on lessons learned, strengthened through collaboration, and bound to a community dedicated to making a difference. What once was a fracture had turned into a foundation from which greater things could sprout, nurtured by determination and the unwavering love for his children. As the reverberations of applause faded into the warm evening air, Derek stood at the podium, heart swelling with a mixture of pride and satisfaction. The financial literacy event had been a remarkable success, bringing together families, local businesses, and community leaders united by a common goal: to cultivate knowledge that would empower them to break free from the chains of financial uncertainty. He felt a sense of belonging that he hadn't quite expected, as if he were part of something larger than himself, an ongoing mission of change that resonated deep in his bones. In the weeks following the event, momentum continued to build. Local media outlets picked up on the initiative, celebrating not just Derek's work, but also the tangible impact it had on community members. Families were sharing stories of hope and success, detailing how newfound budgeting skills had already begun to change their lives. Derek found himself inundated with requests for additional workshops and support programs, and he began collaborating with civic leaders to establish ongoing resources for families in need. Despite the whirlwind of projects and the positive feedback flooding in, Derek's personal life maintained its own rhythm of careful navigation. His co-parenting relationship with Claire blossomed as they each embraced newfound roles in their children's lives. They attended school events, sports games, and even family outings with a level of camaraderie that felt both unfamiliar and reassuring. Claire's commitment to her journey of self-improvement remained steadfast, and her consistent efforts to be present for Alice and Ethan didn't go unnoticed. As summer rolled into fall, Derek found himself drawn into new adventures with the children. Their weekends were filled with hiking, exploring museums, and cooking together. Each chance to create memories felt like reclaiming a piece of joy that had been lost during the tumultuous years of his marriage. Alice and Ethan thrived under the steady guidance that he provided, their laughter a sweet melody in the backdrop of the ordinary moments. However, one evening, during a casual dinner at his home, Derek received a surprise text from Claire. "I have a favor to ask. Can we talk when you have a moment?" A wave of unease washed over him. Was she struggling again? Did she need something that threatened the stability they had fought so hard to establish? After putting the kids to bed, he responded, "Sure, what's up?" The exchange continued, culminating in an agreement to meet the following afternoon. When they met at a local cafe, Derek sensed the gravity in the air as Claire entered, her demeanor unusually serious. "I wanted to discuss something that's been weighing on me," she began, taking her seat across from him, fingers nervously tapping the table. "What's going on?" he asked, concerned by the tension surrounding her. "Well, I've been reflecting on my mistakes and I'm starting to understand the depth of my shortcomings as a mother and a wife. I want to be better, but I know that I can't erase the past. That said, I think we need to talk about my relationship with the kids." Derek felt a tight knot form in his stomach. "What do you mean?" "I'm worried they'll never fully trust me again. I feel like the summer outing was a good step forward, but I think they need more consistency. I was wondering if you would allow me to take them for a few days while I show them how serious I am about becoming an integral part of their lives again," Claire explained, her voice laced with vulnerability. The request hung in the air, and Derek's heart raced. While part of him appreciated her initiative, another part felt an immediate rush of protectiveness for Alice and Ethan. "What does that entail?" he asked cautiously. "I want to take them on a weekend trip, something fun and engaging. I'll plan activities that can bond us better, things they love to do. I want them to see that I'm committed to being here for them as more than just a visitor in their lives." Derek weighed her words carefully, battling internal hesitation. He had become accustomed to being their sole stability, and the thought of relinquishing that felt unsettling. Yet, deep down, he recognized the value of this opportunity for Claire. If her intentions were genuine, this might enable healing, both for her and for the kids. "Okay," he finally replied, pausing to reinforce his resolve. "You can take them, but only under one condition. You ensure it's entirely about them, focused on positive experiences. I want regular updates. I need to know they're safe and happy." Claire nodded, her expression transforming into one of gratitude. "Thank you, Derek. I promise I'll make it worth it." As the days passed leading up to the weekend trip, Derek experienced a mix of anticipation and anxiety. He maintained open communication with Alice and Ethan about the upcoming trip, framing it as a chance for them to reconnect with their mom. The children expressed excitement, hopeful that they could create new memories with her despite the shadows of the past. Derek spent the hours leading up to their departure, organizing their bags and ensuring they had everything they needed. He tucked personal notes into their suitcases, little reminders for them to cherish the time they would spend with Claire. As they hugged goodnight that evening, he pressed his forehead against each child's. "Remember, no matter what, you always have me. I'm right here if you need to talk." The next morning, he dropped them off with Claire at the cafe. As they prepared to leave for their trip, Claire approached Derek, a sincere smile gracing her face. "Thank you for trusting me," she said quietly, and he nodded, the weight of responsibility looming as she led the children away. Those few days stretched into an exercise in patience for Derek. While he maintained his busy schedule with work and the financial program, his nights were often filled with restless thoughts of what was occurring in Claire's care. He sought solace in the stories shared by families engaged in the literacy program, reminding himself of the larger picture, progress over perfection. Finally, the weekend concluded, and Derek anxiously awaited their return. When he received a message from Claire, he sensed his heart race. "We had an amazing time. I think they're starting to see me differently. Can we talk?" Meeting again at the cafe, Derek found both Alice and Ethan bubbling with excitement. Their faces lit up as they recounted their shared adventures with Claire. The hiking, the cooking, the laughter that echoed through the trees during their weekend trip. Claire's presence felt light as she openly discussed the experiences she had shared with the kids. Derek listened intently, discovering unexpected gratitude mixing with the lingering caution in him. It became clear that Claire had approached the weekend with sincerity, focusing on rebuilding trust through genuine effort. Alice and Ethan's enthusiasm was contagious, and he allowed himself to feel a flicker of hope. That day became a turning point, not just for Claire's relationship with their children, but also for his outlook on her journey of growth. As he looked around the cafe, the spirit of the community effort emerged not just in his financial initiatives, but also in embracing the complexities of personal relationships. Derek realized that healing wasn't linear, but a spectrum of emotions, growth, and the courage to face old fears. Maybe the path forward was filled with rough edges, but he was committed to navigating them. Not just for the sake of himself, but for their entire family. As he stepped outside with Alice and Ethan, he felt more equipped to remain present in all aspects of his life, fortified by the knowledge that every minute spent nurturing connection was a testament to the possibility of healing, hope, and love. The future lay ahead, a blank canvas, and he was ready to paint it with strokes of understanding, resilience, and the unwavering belief that both personal and communal identity could flourish hand in hand. The weeks that followed were filled with a renewed sense of balance. The partnership between Derek and Claire seemed to flourish against the odds. After the successful weekend trip, their communication became more fluid, less strained. Derek felt a cautious optimism as both he and Claire put in the effort to firmly establish their co-parenting relationship, believing they could afford to be more than just two people sharing children, but rather partners, committed to the well-being of Alice and Ethan. Derek found himself reflecting on the fragile thread connecting them all, observing how Claire's commitment to change affected their day-to-day lives. They attended school events together, cheering on their children at soccer games, and engaged in constructive discussions about parenting strategies. For the first time, there was a palpable sense of unity. Derek's work with the financial literacy program remained a focal point in his life, and he saw firsthand how the efforts begun months ago were snowballing into a movement that sparked enthusiasm in the community. Derek was invited to speak at several local forums, showcasing the success stories coming from families that had benefited from the workshops. As he shared his journey from despair to empowerment, his narrative resonated with many, and he reveled in the collective journey toward financial stability unfolding before him. However, despite this burgeoning success, Derek was occasionally reminded of the emotional scars lingering beneath the surface. One afternoon, while preparing for an important presentation, he was jolted by an unexpected phone call from Claire. "Hey, can you talk?" she asked, her voice tinged with an urgency that put him on alert. "What's going on?" he replied, anxiety creeping in as he skipped preparations for the evening's meeting. "It's about the kids," she said, taking a breath that made him uneasy. "Something happened at school today. I need your help." His stomach twisted as he set aside his papers, focusing entirely on her. What happened? They were cornered by some kids at school, mocking them about us, about the divorce, about me. They said things that really hurt them, Claire explained, her voice breaching a fragile layer of vulnerability. "I couldn't help but feel like it's my fault." Derek felt the air thicken. "Okay, let's address this together." They agreed to meet at the school the next day. Derek showed up earlier, his mind racing with thoughts on how to tackle the bullying, how to empower their children amidst the whispers of discord they had yet to escape. As he walked through the hallways, he recognized familiar faces, teachers who had seen the dissolution of his marriage unfold publicly. Each glance felt like a reminder of his past, a reminder of all that could unravel again if he allowed it. When Claire arrived, they met outside the principal's office. "We can do this," Derek assured her. trying to project a calm exterior even while his insides churned. As they entered, the principal greeted them with empathy. "I'm glad you both came in. We can certainly make this a teachable moment both for Alice and Ethan and the other children involved." The ensuing conversation proved fruitful, blending strategies aimed at not just addressing the bullying incident, but fostering a sense of resilience within Alice and Ethan. They talked about open communication, addressing feelings, and building healthy relationships, both with each other and with peers. By the end of the meeting, Derek found himself feeling proud, not only for the progress in co-parenting, but for Claire's willingness to confront the uncomfortable topics head-on. He could see why she was making strides. Her desire to take responsibility resonated with him. As they walked to the car, he turned to her. "You handled that well. Thanks for being proactive." "Thanks for being there," Claire replied with a faint smile, a hint of warmth lighting her eyes. "I really appreciate your support." That was a small moment of connection, but it signified something deeper. They were no longer anchored solely in their past, but tethered to a shared mission to raise well-rounded children. It was refreshing. Perhaps, he mused, the wounds of betrayal could evolve into lessons of strength rather than bitterness. In the days that followed, a series of emotional discussions began to unfold. More frequent, candid dialogue between them gradually chipped away at the walls he had constructed. They found themselves exploring aspects of their old relationship that had been buried beneath resentment. It felt almost like a friendship bridging their past. Their efforts to keep their children's best interests at heart were beginning to resemble a united front, one grounded in accountability and trust. However, Derek didn't let his guard down. He remained vigilant, reminding himself that Claire's transformation was ongoing. Although he lent his support, it was paramount to maintain boundaries. He understood that healing required both time and sincerity. One evening, nearly a month after the bullying incident, Derek stood in front of the mirror, mentally preparing for the next step in his own journey. He had been invited to lead a discussion panel focused on financial literacy and mental health at a larger conference. This was an opportunity to amplify the voices of those who had suffered and found redemption through community support. He felt a surge of excitement mixed with nerves. Standing up for his beliefs and extending his journey to a broader audience had never felt more vital. As he stepped onto the stage, he surveyed the audience, taking in the diversity of faces and backgrounds. He began to speak, drawing on his own journey, the triumphs, failures, and the lessons that emerged from the ashes of his past. Education is not just about numbers. It's about empowerment, he remarked, his voice steady as he shared the stories of families whose lives had transformed through the program. Each word met with an appreciative response from the audience. He could hear murmurs of agreement and encouragement, urging him to dig deeper. He relayed anecdotes, making critical connections between financial literacy and emotional well-being. The synergy of knowledge and healing resonated through the crowd, and Derek felt invigorated. In the audience, Claire watched intently. Her interest peaked as she realized the depth of his commitment. Derek illuminated the path forward, one that didn't dwell in anger but rather focused on the power of education, support, and resilience. As he concluded his presentation to enthusiastic applause, the glimmer of hope that had begun its slow ascent in their family heart took on new meaning. Backstage after the event, Claire approached him, her eyes sparkling with admiration. "You were incredible," she said genuinely. "Thank you. I just want people to know they're not alone," Derek replied, his heart lightening. "Well, you definitely made an impact," she smiled, and in that moment, Derek felt their connection deepen. Perhaps she was growing, and maybe, just maybe, he could consider another layer to their evolving dynamic. This moment marked a subtle shift in Derek's outlook. He began to see the potential for change, not just in himself, but in Claire, and within the fabric of their family amidst the complexities they had encountered. Derek returned home that night with a sense of purpose resonating within him, growing ever stronger. It became undeniably clear. He had shouldered the weight of both the past and future, and the present was a canvas upon which he had full control over the strokes that would define their lives from then on. Boundaries continued to solidify, but a fragile yet promising bond was forming between him and Claire. a relationship more focused on collective growth than individual wounds. As the days continued to melt into weeks, the journey became less about navigating the pain and more about awakening a shared vision for their family, one built on trust, understanding, and resilience. A new beginning nestled on the foundations of their shared experiences. With each passing day, the new equilibrium in Derek and Claire's relationship began to take root. They continued to find strength in their teamwork, collaboratively navigating their responsibilities while nurturing a cautious yet evident friendship. Derek realized that the fundamental shift in their dynamic was gradually altering the way they both viewed their past. No longer just a source of pain, but a foundation supporting their new roles as co-parents. In the midst of this transformation, Derek's work flourished. The traction his financial literacy program had gained allowed him to expand his vision. Inspired by the positive feedback and tangible changes he witnessed in families, he decided to introduce a youth mentorship initiative aimed at helping adolescents learn valuable life skills, financial literacy, and emotional intelligence. He rallied volunteers, sought out community partnerships, and began laying the groundwork to implement this next phase. As he nurtured his professional aspirations, Derek also managed to redouble his efforts to carve out quality moments with Alice and Ethan. He began integrating lessons from the discussions he had led at the panel into their everyday lives, using playful exercises to teach them about budgeting and savings in ways the children could grasp. Pizza-making nights turned into lessons about the costs of ingredients and how to save when grocery shopping. Conversations seamlessly blended with laughter that echoed through their kitchen. Nights spent cooking became a ritual of sorts, the simple act of shared cooking morphing into meaningful lessons layered with affection, patience, and growth. Derek cherished the joy painted across Alice and Ethan's faces when they savored the fruits of their labor, bonding over the dishes they created together. Each interaction unfurled layers of a family unit that felt increasingly whole, but remained ever cautious of the fissures that had once cracked their foundation. In the midst of their newfound harmony, Derek received an unexpected phone call from Claire one Friday evening. "Can we talk? There's something important I need to discuss," she said, her voice tinged with urgency. "Sure." "What's up?" Derek replied, mentally preparing himself for another serious conversation. "I've been thinking about how much progress we've made lately," Claire began, her tone steadying, "and I feel ready to take another step in my journey. I would like to bring a therapist into the mix, not just for me, but for the kids as well. I think it could be beneficial for us as a family." The request caught Derek slightly off guard. On one hand, he welcomed the idea of addressing any underlying issues and building a united front for their children. On the other, he felt a flicker of uncertainty. "Are you saying you think therapy would help us communicate better?" he asked, his brow furrowing with cautious optimism. "Exactly. I know I've made mistakes, and while I'm learning, I think it would be good for all of us to work through some of the issues together," Claire replied, sincerity lacing her words. "It can strengthen our co-parenting relationship, and we can give the kids a safe space to process everything they've experienced." Derek considered her proposal, his mind weighing the potential benefits against the history they shared. "Okay," he finally agreed, though he maintained a level of vigilance. "If it helps us create a better environment for the kids, then I'm willing to try." As they began searching for a family therapist, Derek noticed a marked shift in Claire. She actively engaged in discussions about parenting styles, effective communication, and emotional support. It became evident that she was committed to building a stable support system, not only for herself, but also for Alice and Ethan. The first couple of sessions with the therapist focused on communication, once shadowed by resentment and mistrust, now gradually giving way to honesty and reflection. During these sessions, they unveiled their emotional scars and examined the underlying reasons for their choices. Derek quickly learned that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness, but rather an avenue for healing. It was challenging, but necessary, a commitment each made for the sake of their children. As months passed, the sessions proved to be beneficial. With each revelation and discussion, Derek's heart began to thaw, allowing glimmers of forgiveness to shine through. He learned how to articulate his needs while listening to Claire's perspective, fostering an environment of dialogue marked by mutual respect. Outside of therapy, their commitment to co-parenting blossomed further. They co-hosted family outings, planned joint vacations, and sat together at school events where their children thrived. Derek found himself contemplating the future. How could they continue to strengthen this bond? It felt uneasy at first. However, clarity emerged, showing him an opportunity to reimagine their relationship. One rainy Saturday, they gathered as a family for a movie night. Popcorn popped, laughter filled the room, and they settled in for a film neither Derek nor Claire had seen in years. During a particularly touching scene, Alice turned toward her parents, her curiosity peeking through. "Can we be like this all the time? It feels nice." Derek exchanged glances with Claire, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. "We can keep doing this," Derek responded, his voice laden with warmth. "We've made important changes for you two, and we can keep building on that. You're the reason we work together. Always." As they embraced the evolving dynamic, the seeds of a new foundation were taking root, the growth of a family woven together by love, determination, and forgiveness. But as time progressed, a shadow of doubt crept in at the edges. Derek couldn't shake the apprehension that stood behind every step they took forward. Claire's journey of healing had opened doors, but he knew that such paths could be unpredictable. One evening, during a particularly candid therapy session, they broached the subject of trust and commitment. "Derek, I know I've broken your trust, and I want you to know that I'm working hard to rebuild it," Claire confessed, her voice cracking slightly. Taking a deep breath, Derek weighed his words carefully. "I appreciate that, Claire, but there's still a part of me that fears we're always going to be dancing around old wounds. I want to believe in your resolve, but the scars still remain present." The vulnerability within the room pulsed, and Derek felt the weight of his truth lift. It seemed as if their histories had finally begun to meld into a discussion of possibility rather than despair. "Let's not forget that healing takes time. I'm committed to being here, and I hope you can see that this applies to us working on building a new foundation going forward," Claire countered gently, her sincerity radiating. Derek absorbed her response. The subtle shift in their conversation mirrored the evolution their relationship had undergone, evolving into a dialogue stitched with hope rather than despair. And as they continued down this winding path, Derek rediscovered a sense of promised potential, a rekindling of triumph born from the trials they had endured. He now understood that overcoming the past would be a continuous journey, but facing it together offered a future ripe with possibility, healing, and the enduring spirit of resilience that bound them as a family. As they exited the therapy office that evening, bolts of rain drummed on the pavement. But Derek felt renewed hope wash over him, an assurance that, like the skies clearing after a storm, they could rebuild. Moving forward, they were not just survivors of their past. They were thriving, unified in purpose, embracing a collaborative vision for the family they were collectively forging. Derek had transformed. No longer tethered to resentment, he was no longer just a man seeking vengeance, but a dedicated father determined to create a legacy of understanding, love, and fortitude. As the weeks turned into months, Derek and Claire's bond continued to deepen. Therapy sessions had become a cornerstone of their evolving relationship. They developed the ability to communicate needs and emotions with more clarity, allowing the remnants of their past to transform into constructive dialogue rather than a fuel for resentment. Derek found himself increasingly at ease in the new rhythm of their shared parenting. They navigated the complexities of co-parenting with newfound purpose and harmony. Derek and Claire began collaborating on family projects, such as home improvement and meal plans. One Sunday, they proudly welcomed Alice and Ethan into the fold, teaching the kids how to cook a simple family recipe. Laughter filled the air as flour dusted their noses, the kitchen transforming into a space of playful chaos. "Just like this, we can be cooks and creators together," Claire said, expertly cracking an egg into the mixing bowl. a metaphor for their lives that seemed to apply to more than just cooking. Derek couldn't help but smile, feeling a unique warmth envelop the room. The children excitedly contributed, their happiness resonating through the laughter and shared experiences. They thrilled at the wonders of mixing ingredients, and small moments of lightness felt transcendent in contrast to the heaviness that had hung over their family just a year prior. Parking their personal history aside, Claire and Derek began to dream about a future that might involve doing more things as a family. One evening, while watching the sunset from their balcony with the kids, they began to brainstorm ideas for an upcoming family trip. What if we explored a national park together? We could experience nature and go hiking, Derek proposed enthusiastically. Claire looked up with a smile. That sounds perfect. We can plan out activities the kids would love, maybe even a camping night under the stars. The children cheered at the idea, and the excitement became contagious. As they brainstormed trip logistics, Derek noticed how Claire seemed genuinely engaged and inspired, sharing her input rather than defaulting to familiar patterns of being passive. Their collaborative planning foreshadowed the strength of their partnership. In the coming weeks, they solidified the trip, researching parks and creating itineraries. As the date approached, anticipation built within their family, culminating in a collective excitement that made everything feel alive. Yet, despite this flourishing environment, Derek couldn't ignore the cautious voice in his head, a feeling that lingered from the past. They had made significant strides, but how could he be sure that this time would be different? Moments would creep in where doubt tainted his optimism, though he focused on the present. On the day of the trip, they loaded the car with gear and snacks, the kids buzzing with energy. Arriving at the park, they were greeted by the delicate scent of pine and the rustle of leaves in the summer breeze. Derek felt exhilaration surge through him as they stepped out, greeted by wide open spaces and the grandeur of nature. They took to the trails, their laughter punctuating the sounds of chirping birds, and Derek savored this moment of family unity that felt hard-won. It was more than a hike. It was a testament to their journey, full of ups and downs, but culminating in this beautiful experience. As the day wore on, they climbed hills, explored hidden trails, and shared stories around a campfire that night. The rhythm of the flames flickering in the darkness became a backdrop for connection. Derek made s'mores, his hands sticky with melted chocolate, as the children squealed with delight. In this moment, surrounded by nature and their little family, Claire leaned closer. I can't express how grateful I am to be with you all right now. These moments remind me that change is possible. Derek looked into her eyes, realizing how far they had come. I never imagined I could feel this comfortable with you again, but here we are, embracing something good. Their quiet connection reaffirmed the commitment they had both made to one another, not just to their children, but to the lessons learned through adversity. As they shared stories, marshmallows toasted to perfection, Derek felt a warmth bloom in his chest, a feeling that the future held potential. With each shared glance, laughter, and silent moment around the fire, the memories they created together solidified the foundation of a family that was no longer weighed down by past mistakes. There was something sacred about standing together, the stars above them twinkling in approval. The next morning greeted them with sunshine pouring through their tent, and after breakfast, they embarked on a new adventure, exploring a nearby lake. The children raced ahead, their excitement palpable. Derek felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, appreciating the moments he had previously believed would be forever lost. As they navigated together through the woods, with laughter reverberating through the trees, he noticed Claire catching her breath as she admired the beauty surrounding them. There was a poetic honesty in her gaze, a woman who had fought for redemption and was choosing to embrace it. Look at them, she said, nodding toward the kids as they splashed in the water. They don't hold on to our past like we do. They just live in the moment. Derek smiled, a realization settling in. They remind us of what really matters. We've got to keep giving them this, these experiences, this love. After the lake, they set out along a scenic trail, cherishing the simplicity of their surroundings. As they walked, They began to reflect on the lessons learned about trust, patience, and the intricate fabric of familial love woven through their shared experiences. Later that evening, after the sun dipped below the horizon, they gathered around another campfire. The flickering flames became witnesses to their renewed commitments. "I think we should establish new traditions," Claire proposed, her face illuminated by the firelight. "Moments we'll share as a family from now on." Derek's heart leapt at the suggestion. He realized they were in the process of crafting not only a series of accompaniments to their parenting, but also new stories forged on trust and connection. "Next year, let's plan to come back here and do it all again," he replied, finding joy in the thought of authoritative optimism, replacing what had once been a hollow existence. With each word exchanged, the foundation of their new life solidified further, emboldening them to keep moving forward. They were resolved to stay committed to their children's happiness, a pact made from the depths of their previous turmoil and sacrifices. As they extinguished the fire and climbed into the tent, Derek took a moment, gazing at the stars overhead, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment and hope, an acknowledgement that, while their past still existed, it was no longer the definitive narrative. In the heart of the wilderness, they had created a space for healing, where forgiveness resonated vividly and love flourished amid landscapes painted with hues of redemption. With that essence reverberating in his chest, Derek knew the path ahead remained filled with challenges, but he also understood that they now shared the courage, love, and wisdom to embrace them together. They were not just a family, they were a testament to resilience, interwoven destinies, and the transformative power of love.